Fnatic defended their spot at the top of their region standings. Will Gale Force eSports. Gilly and Dread here, as always, bringing you the Heroes Global Championship in North America this weekend. Dread, we are on a different patch. We're on the Garrosh balance patch. There's been a lot of support changes. Were there any immediate picks that you saw in Korea or Europe that we should be keeping our eyes out for here in North America?
I think the biggest things to take note over the meta changes so far have got to be Korea still comfortable picking the high Ariel, but then the ETC priority coming out from the European region. We saw a lot of games where he's even not necessarily first pick, but always before the secondary ban phase. And I think that's something that we might see some of the other regions picking up this weekend.
We'll have to see if we're going to have some surprisingly high ETC picks in North America. But speaking of surprises, Roll20 and Lag Force last weekend performed exceptionally well, and the standings have been able to show their accomplishments. Roll20 in getting 2 3-0 victories over Team Freedom and Tempo Storm rose from 4th place to 2nd in the standings. And meanwhile, Lag Force, defeating Superstars as well as Space Station Gaming, has been able to claw their way out of the Crucible range for now, putting Superstars in their stead.
And that now suddenly makes the games this weekend that much more important for Superstars, specifically their series against Even and Death. Because of the results that we had out of last week in the dominant performance from Lag Force, suddenly it's pretty much a must-win for them to be able to take out Even and Death if they want to keep out of that Crucible range, or sadly fall, and suddenly get locked in there at the bottom 2.
Yeah, and we'll see that match later on this weekend. But as for today, what you can expect in the schedule, after HGC Korea, we kicked off in Europe, with Fnatic claiming another 3-0 victory and making it that much closer to them being able to attend the HGC finals at BlizzCon. They want it that way, but it's been tearing up my heart to see Team Liquid have as much difficulty as they've been having, but I do believe that they'll be able to bounce back. And meanwhile, Team Dignitas continues their climb as well with a victory over Team Good Guys.
And for what we can expect out of North America today, it's going to be Lag Force and Roll20 at the very end, but first, Gale Force eSports versus Tempo Storm. Some of the biggest names in the North American scenes there are going to be kicking it off.
It was over a year ago that the members of Murloc Geniuses, now Tempo Storm, along with the Warrior player that Gale Force cast aside, Fury, were able to usurp Gale Force eSports and sit atop the North American region. And while Tempo Storm has continued to claim that spot for just about a year, there have been a lot of teams that have been struggling and trying to take their crown, including the deposed Gale Force eSports.
And Gale Force has been the only team out of North America when Tempo Storm was at their best at phase number 1 to be able to compete with that refined version of the Tempo Storm roster. In total, Gale Force has managed to go 3-1 with their series in best of 5s only against Tempo Storm. So they are really, the best opponent to be able to be the, Kryptonite, the only target to take out Tempo. And this is the best version of Gale Force that we have ever seen. So suddenly, you might even be able to say, Tempo Storm is in fact an underdog in the series.
Yeah, we look at this series, and yes, of course, it is about HGC finals. It's about increasing your odds of being able to qualify for that event. But it goes beyond that. After a year's worth of work, after role changes, roster changes, we're looking at this as one of a few series that will help us determine, after that full year, who is the best team in North America. So let's get things started as 2 North American Titans prepare to battle.
Our match with Gale Force is really important because we've already lost to them earlier in the year, and they're currently in 1st place in the standings. So in order for us to have any real hope of 1st place, this weekend's game against GFE is a must-win. And so pretty much this is our last and only chance to secure a chance at 1st place going into BlizzCon. We've already lost 2 series to them in the last month or 2. They have kind of taken over the role that we used to be as the most consistent team in the HGC. And so I kind of come into this feeling like we're the challengers against GFE now, as they've kind of supplanted us as that reliable, steady team, and we need to show that we've made some changes to catch back up.
I think Tempo Storm is pretty much more or less what they've always been. I do think that other teams in North America are catching up and potentially overtaking them at this point, so I still think they're one of the top teams, but they're not the definitive top team in North America anymore. most of our recent encounters, we've beaten them, and I expect that to continue, but I think it will be pretty close and good games.
Both Fan and Koth and Luck echoing a lot of our sentiments about how important this match is. It is not cut and dry anymore who the top team in North America is.
I don't think it's cut and dry on the top 4, really, even in North America.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a lot of things that are not cut and dry. The closest thing that I totally can say for a fact is that one of the 3 teams that we have at the bottom end, 2 of them actually, are going to be in Crucible. And beyond that point, I'm just like, it's a coin toss. Anything can happen here in NA.
We're just coasting along, trying to figure it out. But it does seem like Gale Force has a lot of wind beneath their sails, especially when you consider the fact that Gale Force, Fan came in along with them around this time last year. They did lose to Murloc Geniuses, now Tempo Storm, at the first regional. And then in the second regional, they didn't even make it, I believe, out of the group stage, which then put them in a tiebreaker series versus Denial, 2 of which the members are now sitting on Gale Force eSports. And that ultimately led to Gale Force not being able to go to BlizzCon, which was huge for them. It was such an upset, so frustrating, especially after they had already lost in the first group stages of our Summer Global Championship. Then not to get to attend the Fall Global Championship was a huge downfall for them and for Gale Force fans.
And we oftentimes talk about Gale Force eSports being a team that constantly will get a major roster swap come in, and everybody suddenly goes, best team in North America. No doubt it is going to be it, and it just fails to meet the prophecy, right? They do not meet up to the hype that they have been given. And for the first time ever, I don't want to say that I feel like they have met up to the hype, because they had a high bar set for this group of members and players. But they are by far the closest they have ever gotten to kind of fulfilling the role and assumptions of play that we kind of gave them as a 5-man roster with that new group. So it's only fitting, I feel like, that maybe that's the moment where they get the breaking point over Tempo Storm.
Well, to get even more excited about this incredible matchup, we've got a few tweets that we could read, and you guys can always get in touch with us. Tweet using the hashtag HGC. We've also got @Heroes Esports. Let's read a few of these, though, from Kage Tai Manga. Sorry if I butchered that. Let's go Gale Force. Let's keep that #1 spot, HGC.
Keep getting that. To be honest, I actually equally struggled with that one. I was trying to figure out that Cage Thank You Mania. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. I know this one, though. It is the Night.
Oh, you got an easy one.
Good luck, Tempo Storm. Y'all got this. Just keeping it, nice and simple there. Letting everybody know, supporting my boys at Tempo Storm. And they've got it here. And then it is the warrior player for Tempo Storm himself.
Fury. Today is such an important day. We have to show that we're still a strong team fighting for the top 3 slots. I'll do my best. Fury back in the warrior position, primary warrior position, it seems. There has again been some role swaps between the members of Tempo Storm. We saw Sam being in the side-soaking lane, and even picking up Dahaka for, I think, the first time that we've seen him play that hero for a long time in order to do that. And Caterpillar sitting as the Tassadar player. We only saw him play Tassadar. Tassadar first pick in every single game of their 3-game series versus Roll20.
Yeah, it's interesting, when looking at the results of the last week and then some of the things that have come out from the teams and their perspectives overall. Even, so much so as the Tempo Storm coach admitting that they felt like Garrosh wasn't nearly as big of a problem, that they felt like there were a lot of other directions to go into. So then you suddenly go, well, if Tempo didn't feel that way, are their drafts going to be similar to what they were? How big is the patch going to play into the dynamic of both these teams overall in their drafting? I'm still yet to figure it out. I just feel like the biggest thing that we know here is that we can claim Gale Force, is the upper hand here. They are the big dog of this 2 teams.
Let's take a look before we get into the draft, the battlegrounds, at the big fans of Gale Force, the top cheerers throughout HGC cheer program for Gale Force eSports. At the top dog, Rob Dog.
Rob Dog, Gladman, he slipped a little bit lower than you would expect, though, but Gladman always seems to be showing up at everybody else. King Tweaks, Vivek, I don't even know, man. I'm not even going to give it an attempt. I thank you, every single person here, for your contributions over to Gale Force eSports and cheering them on.
Oh, there's Gladman.
Yeah,
that's why.
He found his way back up to the first place spot there, quite handedly for Tempo Storm.
We've also got Casaran, Mr. Plex, Tarfu, and SPM09. 2 fan favorite teams, Gale Force and Tempo Storm, in the North American region, and I am very excited to see this series. Even a fan admitted, and Koth and Luck, that even if you know, regardless of who wins, it's going to be a close series. It always seems to come down to the wire between them. Even in scrims, it goes all the way to the bitter end in games. These teams know each other so well. They have a lot of similar favored battlegrounds too, which plays a lot into that. So expect a close one, a good one here for our first series.
I'm really excited to see what we see in terms of play style. What I do, because we know a lot of times teams are very comfortable up until they get pressured. And so a lot of times the top teams are the ones that not get pressured. So it's almost inevitable that on both sides of the table, we're going to see some kind of adjustment to be able to deal with whatever the opponent is flinging their way. And it's just when we see that pressure, how likely they are to, you know, adjust reactively within a, I guess, effectively, but then also within an efficient amount of time. And I feel like Tempo Storm has been a team that's shown more often than not to struggle in that avenue when they are the pressure team. And they're going to get a lot more of that with the way that they've been playing recently. So it's going to be really cool to see how Gale Force kind of forces their hand throughout the entire game.
Well, the stage has been set, and we are ready for game number 1. Let's check out the Battleground pool. We're going to Cursed Hollow for game number 1. Tempo Storm, oh man. They have banned Braxis Holdout over Infernal Shrines. I cannot remember. I actually do remember. It was sometime in Phase 1 when they switched their ban from Battlefield of Eternity to Infernal Shrines, and they have never looked back. They have never changed that. Banning Braxis Holdout here. Conceding to Gale Force. Yes, in part 1 of Phase 2, Tempo did beat Gale Force. Gale Force sort of had a slump on Braxis Holdout as other teams adapted to their style. But Gale Force came back on Braxis in a big way in Western Clash, and that forced a ban. We may see Tempo. I'm sure we're going to see Tempo on Infernal Shrines.
And what a great place to kick off game number 1.
Oh,
Gale
yeah.
Force has taken us to a place where, even though this is not expert in Tempo Storm, Gale Force is taking us to a position to where Tempo's still comfortable on Cursed Hollow. By no means are they looking at Cursed Hollow and saying, you know, we aren't feeling too hot for game number 1. So confidence from both sides, or at least more adjustments from both of these teams. But here it is, Tassadar has been removed on the side. Keep in mind that is Tempo in the right, and Team Expert is in fact Gale Force. And then we got the Abathur removes Snap Dahaka, though, picked up for Tempo.
Yeah, Tempo does not want to let Gale Force run away with the globals, as they so often do. Tempo Storm, though, banning Tassadar. As we talked about a little bit ago, Tempo first picked Tassadar in every single game of their series versus Roll20. They also picked Li Ming at some point in every single one of those games. A lot of Li Ming play for Cothenluck. Unfortunately for Tempo, things didn't work to plan in their series versus Roll20. It was a disappointing loss, 3-0 to them. And I guarantee that they have made the appropriate adjustments to make sure that that does not happen versus Gale Force today.
The Dahaka pick for Tempo Storm should be pretty advantageous for them. North America has dropped off a little bit into the Illidan Avenue, and that really, I mean, let's be honest here, was the only answer to Dahaka into a laning matchup.
But
it turns out Gale Force eSports feels very comfortable being able to get that here. I really like to see this. I was amazed at the drop-off of Illidan into the Dahaka matchup, especially on large maps, out of week number 1. It just seemed like suddenly everybody's like, we don't really mind the Illidan, but Dahaka was everywhere. And so now this is a huge spike in adjustment for Gale Force, but also not when looking at international meta.
keep in mind, though, the Hunt has received quite a nerf in its cooldown, 60 to 100 seconds. Granted, you can still reduce this with Betrayer's Thirst, but this may change up how often we see Michael Udall flying across Cursed Hollow for game 1.
Essentially makes it less of a convenient, maybe casual stun on a gank to a, when we use this cooldown, we need to make sure that the team fight is unfolding. Otherwise, you're going to essentially leave those desired fights uninitiated, and that is nothing that you want to have on your side of the table here. But the Uther as well for Gale Force eSports. I keep thinking that's Team Expert for a moment. I'm just like, you know, for Team Expert, Tempo, though, on their side, it's going to be a Genji Arthas. Not mixing things up too wildly here. I feel like this is very Tempo Storm-esque. To, you know, whether that's good or bad, I feel like is up to your point of view. You know, some people would say that is the best advantage for Tempo. Others may, you know, argue that could be a setback.
Now, I'm wondering if we'll continue to see Psalm on that Dahaka as the side-soaking hero, a side-soaking player, which means that Genji would then be played by Caterpillar. Cattle did play some Genji, and then put Fury back on one of his favorites, always been one of his favorites, Arthas, continuing down the road of being the primary warrior. We'll have to see. We did not see a double warrior setup except for the one Dahaka choice, and it was very evident that this was in a way of making sure that Sam is always the person who is off on his own, making sure that he is safely soaking a lane. Up next, for Gale Force eSports, a ban for Tempo Storm. Are they looking to limit a support here? It looks like yes. Highlighting Rhaegar, making sure that they can't get that burst heal for Genji while he has Deflect on.
I was, kind of questioning what their thought process was, the amount of time specifically that ban took on the side of Gale Force, because the Rhaegar did seem like the kind of more standout one. We have 3 heroes that are going to benefit from it directly. I already have the burst healer on my side. Why not remove the other one? So I was, just got to be looking towards this next two picks for Gale Force, because I feel like their hesitation, even a wild Sergeant Hammer. I don't think it's that wild. I do think that Sergeant Hammer ban is according to that hyper focus into one lane specifically, like we saw. Was it West or East where Sergeant Hammer?
Eastern.
It was Eastern where it got busted out on Cursed Hollow even to get that pressure.
But also, the time that Gale Force came out of nowhere and 3-0'd Tempo, they used a Sergeant Hammer on Cursed Hollow too.
You're
in
right.
Phase 1. I look at that Hammer pick, or Hammer ban, and it's immediate to me just, these two teams scrim each other a lot. That's all to be said about that. Obviously, Gale Force has shown something to that effect here, and Tempo wants nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense too. Again, with that thought process of focusing on the one lane, the Illidan does indicate that you traditionally want to hyper-focus that one, so it's suddenly removing any tools to be able to accent that. Also, it's not like there's a very good wave clear defensive siege on the side of Tempo Storm. They have to get a kill with the Genji diving past and focusing in, so people like that Sergeant Hammer or the wild Sylvanas strategies are a bit more intimidating than they are traditionally.
Anubarak is a warrior pick. Li Ming for a volatile reset hero to have there. And taking away Li Ming as a potential counter for Cocoon along with Anubarak.
A lot of dive in a very win harder composition out of Gale Force eSports right now. With the Illidan and the reset out of Li Ming, both of those heroes, once the first kill happens, if Gale Force gets it, they are far better at ensuring that the next kill ends up going down, but they have no one to set things up for them. And so I'm really hoping that last pick for them, like the first thought that comes up when it goes to setup is like a Malthael, but I don't think that necessarily has to be the pick or even will be the pick for them. But somebody to enable the setup of these kills, because there's a lot of beefy, high mobility, self-sustaining heroes on the other side of the table, and no one on the side of Gale Force really gets them weakened into that let's get the next kill circumstance very effectively right now.
Could still be a Falstad.
It could be. Still a little bit weak in that avenue.
Gust in, like if they want to gust in, but over for Tempo Storm, Malfurion and Greymane. Pulling back into Malfurion, he's got the follow-up roots for drag for Arthas's crowd control.
If we do see the Falstad picked for Gale Force, something of that area, it will be better when it comes to the laning phase a little bit. Essentially having that kind of double global, get the split pressure on the tempo. When it comes to the raw team fighting though, other than the disengage immediately to a mistimed cooldown on your opponent's side, I feel like it really hurts Gale Force's team fight overall. It just doesn't have the damage output that they're looking for, and again, fails to enable this team fight that well. Somebody's got to be kind of getting that AoE damage out and weakening the health bar so Illidan and Li Ming can be a problem. We already have the Anu to be a double threat up in the front. It's just who can prep that fight most effectively here for Gale Force.
Gale Force were willing to run double support before, but that was prior to Uther and Ariel changes. They're going to get Malthael, so a very melee-heavy composition for Gale Force, but they will have Malthael as the setup, starting to bring down the health bars initially versus Tempo Storm, and then Li Ming and Illidan can dive in when people get low to finish off the kills.
I do really like the, Malthael, at least it's something to get that kind of preparation like I was talking about, but it does feel a bit out of place. It doesn't have that kind of oomph I was hoping for with that last lock, because I said that as like it fits the one thing I think it has to have, but for some reason it doesn't necessarily stand out that heavily. Granted, the last two picks on the side of Tempo Storm didn't hurt the Malthael transition. If anything, I think it would help it because it's other heroes that have to team fight whenever they press their R with specifically the Malfurion. Now we've got Arthas, Genji. All of those are ones that whenever things happen, even the Dahaka, when they use the brush stock, when they use their heroics, they have to fight in those moments. So suddenly having a Malthael is really good. Whenever your opponent needs to have that fight at that exact second, you always get value out of Tormented Souls. But when it's the other way around and Team Tempo gets to decide, it gets a little bit hairy. So I feel like if anything, maybe Tempo played into the hand of enabling that Malthael pick a little bit too much with their rotations, but their team fight is still intimidating and pretty outstanding. A lot of this, I think, comes down to the Illidan specifically.
Yeah, I agree. When does he hunt in? How is he going to be using that cooldown? How affected by that cooldown change is Michael Udall from that? If Michael Udall plays the Illidan, I think it still should be. So I'm excited to see who is going to be playing Malthael for Gale Force eSports. Let's get into game number 1. We're heading into Cursed Hollow for Tempo Storm versus Gale Force eSports in this best of 5.
Here it is. In the blue, Mike Udall will be playing the Illidan. We have King Caffeine representing on the Anubarak. Malthael will be played by Fan. K1 Pro on Li Ming. And last is Akaface on Uther.
And their opponents, Tempo Storm in the red, with June support player playing Malfurion. Fury will indeed be playing his Arthas. Cothenluck playing that Greymane. Up next, we'll have Genji played by Psalm, which means Caterpillar will be going back to the side soak playing Dahaka.
The Dahaka versus the Illidan matchup. This is what we're going to be focused on throughout this entire game because for a lot of the reasons we were talking about before, how these team fights have to play out for these teams. If Gale Force is winning that side soak laning mismatch, it should be a moment where suddenly Tempo is the one who has to constantly determine which team fight they want to take, how they take it, and they don't have the best initiators. Unless Fury is flanking with that Arthas, it's going to be something where Gale Force gets to pick and choose which fights they take, and that is a huge advantage, unless the Dahaka is winning that 1v1. That is, I mean, it's actually amazing how impactful that I believe this 1v1 is going to be throughout the entire game.
Both Tempo Storm and Gale Force trying to take some early structures, but Tempo Storm had Dahaka as a way of being able to stalk into the mid, or head into the mid and stop what he could from Gale Force's pressure. Nubrock will get taken out by Psalm as he chases him down for first blood.
That was a very good job here, and the members of Tempo Storm still sharking off into the side. Even Psalm eating a full combo from K1 Pro, but at the end of the day, a kill over to Tempo is a great sign of life for them here. Something that they got to keep track of also because of the laning situations. Even into Fan with the Malthael, this is a better laning matchup for Cattle, but it's still not a winning one. This one is a bit more situational. It all comes down to, you know, getting the all-in onto the Malthael, trading out to it. But if you're avoiding the Illidan, you got to call that a small plus because we know the Illidan just shreds Dahak.
And Tempo Storm also have Genji as being able to have high mobility. Unfortunately for them though, June's going to drop the zoning roots, but he's so incredibly low in health. The tower's helping out, and Cothenluck there saves June, stopping and making sure that Gale Force are not able to take him out. And the Genji rotation to the top was good, bringing down Malthael and giving a lot of time now where Tempo Storm can siege out some towers.
That was a very good job from Tempo Storm, getting everything that they possibly could. And Gale Force, it's not like they did anything poor. That rotation down to the bottom half, they had beautiful body blocks from both the Anubarak and Akaface there on the Uther. But at the end of the day, Tempo Storm find themselves now with 2 kills over GFE. And more importantly, they've got the Giants advantageously pushing throughout bottom, and they have the tribute up on top. This is, I mean, it could not get better for Tempo.
We've got a tribute that we're going to start covering over who can pick this up. But after that, we got to talk about this Illidan build because it's getting wild. Psalm's going to go in. Howling Blast follows up, missing Akaface. Akaface, you can see the armor that he gives himself now with the self-heal is just 15. That was one of the changes that came in. No longer does Devotion give 25 armor, just giving the 15. However, Guardian of Ancient Kings will still give the 50 before if they want to go that route versus the Malfurion, the classic matchup of Uther versus Malfurion.
Everybody is committed to this tribute, and the Giants on bottom are a problem. Tempo Storm has got to be satisfied with the circumstances they have found themselves in. Time is on their side. Calf moves up to zone out for GFE. Cattle waiting on the wayside, questioning when he wants to move in. Fury throws out the Howling Blast, but it's just poke for now. Nobody getting too hairy.
Continued poke, armor, and the healing, the bigger burst healing that Aquaface on that Uther can provide. Michael Udall has gone all the way to the bottom, and this is not level 10. He does not have Hunt. Tahaka is just going to follow suit, making sure that Tempo Storm is keeping up just as much with the soak. But the Giants did massive amounts of damage to the bottom lane of Gale Force eSports, and finally Tempo Storm will claim a tribute.
K1 Pro unable to get that final delay from Gale Force eSports is really the reasoning as the Tempo able to get that much damage out onto the bottom half of the map. But this is something that Gale Force could have projected. That's one thing we have to keep in mind, is the fact that they knew they were taking up on bottom with the Giants. They knew that they were going to be in that position. They were just trying to wait out, see if they could get that tribute fast enough and within time. But we're going to bring it back a bit. The Unbound at level 4 on Illidan is what you're talking about when it was getting a little wild.
Right. Sweeping Strike can go over walls and terrain. And after it's a questing talent, after hitting 30 heroes, you get a second charge. This gives him a lot of mobility, almost like Genji-like mobility. And I can't tell if this is just so that he can have a little bit easier time rotating around the map pre-10, or if we are possibly seeing a change up in heroic ability and we're going to see a metamorphosis for fights.
I don't honestly have the answer for that right now. It is a really cool adjustment coming out from Mike Udall. Off the top of my head, I feel like this has got to be less heroic dependent, but it is a really, I don't know. Let's see if he comes up with an answer for it. The one thing that I do want to talk about is the fact that you getting the secondary charge mixed with the battered assault increases your damage output a lot more than you would traditionally expect.
That's true.
Because a lot of people fail to appreciate the cooldown on his W is actually pretty long comparative to his Q. You get essentially like 2 Qs in a team fight for every W you get out. So now battered assault with that at level 1, your damage output potential, and getting the double W and getting the auto attack proc, it's essentially 100% uptime on one target until they go down. Because within the 2 cooldowns that you get, you should be enabling the third to be coming off cooldown very, very fast in the next couple of seconds. And, you know, it seems very late game focus in terms of the build in the general direction. It is a talent that I don't think I feel like I can ever say, because we have to remember the trade-off there is friend or foe. That Q, being able to escape and hit your allies for it, I mean, that makes Illidan a beast in how you can play him, the utility in every angle.
Yeah, it's also, you don't have the increased range on dive either, so hindering potentially a chase. But now Tempo Storm, in being able to control the battleground earlier on, get a couple of kills, are too close to heroic abilities for Gale Force to find comfort in going and contesting attributes. They will give up a second. They were able to get one, so it's not a curse for Tempo Storm as they hit heroic abilities. But we have so many different talent change up in only so little time. We've got Lunar Shower instead of Strangling Vines to reduce the healing of Uther. Instead, this way, being able to get more damage out of Moonfire for Malfurion, as well as reduce the cooldown so he has constant Moonfires. And then our Malthael build. I think this is the first time I've ever seen die alone at level 4, but then the mortality, so a Wraith Strike build that does percent-based damage will help versus the double warriors.
The boss is able to be picked up by Tempo. Curse Bullet thrown out, and just kind of poking and prodding is going to be both these teams spanned. Go ahead and pop the Tormented Soul, realizing the cocoon is going to reveal in a couple of seconds. Hunt goes down onto June, and he is going to be blown up before Twilight Dream can even hit. Divine Shield's dropped, and the members of Gale Force want more here, trying to get use of that Unbound. They get it, finding another kill, and 2 for 0 at the end of the day.
They take out Tahaka, they take out June, not even being able to drop Twilight Dream. Gale Force will claim those 2 kills. They still have a boss to deal with up in the top lane, and conveniently for them, there's a tribute spawning nearby. This will help equalize out, so the next tribute will guaranteed be curse point for one of these teams, but Gale Force climbing back into this game with a win in that team fight.
How in the world did Gale Force eSports, they were able to get that fight and get the blow up onto June before he could even get the ice block? This is just been ridiculous. And on the note of, you were talking about the talent that he had taken with the Lunar Shower at level 7. This was a bit more of when Malfurion reworked. We talked a lot about what type of builds we would kind of see out of him. And into Li Ming specifically, I enjoy this talent build. It allows you to, I don't want to say 1v1 because that is not a totally accurate statement, but you get to get a lot of poking on top of her, making her force armor get a lot less value, but then you also can just make Uther waste a heal onto a Li Ming. And that is a big deal. Uther's cooldowns are so very long that all it takes is like 3 Ws on any target, and suddenly he has to waste a heal. And if you get the initiation in that downtime, it could be the difference between life and death.
She also doesn't have dominance at level 4, so without that, even if these Moonfires do start bringing down her health bar, she can't say, give me a kill and I'll be able to get 20% of my health back. Interesting change-ups on both sides of the battleground for these talents, but we have Curse Point Tribute, and both of these teams are ready to get a curse and start bringing down the structures. Tempo Storm has a structural advantage over Gale Force already, so Gale Force really doesn't want to let them have this curse and get even more. Twilight Dream.
Twilight Dream used, and that is going to be enough to not get the kill. There is a beautiful Divine Shield used onto Akaface. June at the end of the day will go down, but it's a 1-for-1 trade for both these teams. K1 Pro trying to get the kite away while Fury chases off King Caffeine away from the fight. Cyber Agility away from the wall allows Psalm to survive. And they are not done though. They're trying to move up. It looks like Cawthon's going to be the focus. He ends up going down. Akaface keeping with the heals to keep himself up.
Cawthon went down, but so did Li Ming. Now Uther is down, but that means he can give the heals to the rest of the remaining members. It's a 3-for-3 with a warrior and a damage dealer on either side, and still the tribute stands. Psalm very low, Fan chasing him down, and now that he's got that Reaper's mark on him, if only he could follow that Swift Strike. June coming back in, Fury was able to delay again. June's back, running in. Once he gets into position for the Moonfires, he'll be able to do a lot of damage. Soft diving back in at the fight for another go.
Oh, we have Mike Udall back to join things as well. Psalm's going to be the first thing we focus. Swift Strike goes in. He gets first reset. Cyber Agility away. And that is a huge play coming out from Psalm. It might be the reason why Tempo Storm is able to get up on this tribute. The Cocoon drops just a zone away, and this is a curse going over to Tempo Storm.
The minute Malthael fell, Gale Force realized they could not lose anybody else for the defense of this curse. They're immediately heading in to get their Giants to help out with the top push, but that fort was already very low, and Tempo Storm will make short work of it with Psalm in the top lane. Every single fort gone for Gale Force eSports gives Tempo Storm a somewhat of a spike in experience, but it's not so much so that this is looking like an unwinnable situation for Gale Force, especially because Gale Force still does have the possibility of a curse to immediately follow this one.
How much is Tempo Storm going to be able to get here? Gale Force, with the Illidan showing on bottom and the Fan now transitioning up towards top, it's very likely that we see them maybe try and get the initiation. They don't want to lose any of the experience that's going to be collecting, though, on the bottom afterwards. So if they take this fight, it's pretty much going to be a loss, because we know on Curse Hollow there's going to be a buildup of experience onto the side lanes, as you see on mid, and now onto the bottom half of the map. Gale Force does make the transition through mid to be able to pick this up, and now bottom seems to be attended to as well, but Tempo ended up not getting too much out of the tribute or the curse itself. That is a huge victory for Gale Force eSports. The only problem is that they're down that entire level on the race to 16.
There was a boss available, but Tempo Storm are so close to 16 that they could head straight there. And Michael Udall is already going to start working on that boss. Top boss now ready and up for Tempo Storm to take that too. And what do? They're too far away, even though Dahaka is in position to check and see if Gale Force are on this boss, but not seeing anybody on the battleground. They know that this is very likely where Gale Force eSports will be sitting, so they're just going to trade out on the bosses. Tempo will have 16 with their boss. You think maybe they could just push along with it immediately and try to use that 16 to get some keep structures?
I mean, they are in a situation where they do have the advantage to push. They should be able to dictate the transitions of Gale Force eSports here. And it looks like they're deciding to do it through mid rather up through top, or at least by the time through the mid wave. Okay, now transitioning up towards top. This is almost 100% going to be a keep. It's more of, does Gale Force get the 16 and able to move past? Fan has to dodge the drag, able to do so, and move past and force this with their 16 talent here, because this is by no means is this game, or even a free keep for that matter. It's only a 12-minute boss.
Drag pulls in a new Barak on top of the boss stun. Divine Shield has been forced.
And that is enough to make sure that this keep is 100% going down. The members of Tempo Storm very satisfied with that initiation, setting themselves ahead so very hard here. But 16 will be picked up for Gale Force, down only one keep, and they still have those 2 tributes. So they are very close to being able to get themselves a colossal experience, or at least structure spike as this game moves forward.
I wondered if we were going to get Blades of Azeroth full sweeping strike build. And as far as Unbound, only 8 stacks so far. He's got to hit 30 heroes with Sweeping Strike. But so far, there's been a lot of side soaking for Michael Udall. That might change though, as we're going to have another battle.
Aquaface is first to focus.
The
The hunt goes in. It's going to start on to Psalm. He drops the cocoon, but already on the backside, we see that Gale Force have lost themselves in Uther, and that was before Divine Shield's use. Now Psalm goes in with the Dragon Blade. He's trying to hack away at Gale Force eSports, only finds the Anub. Uther's clone seems to be going down, his ghost, and so the tribute over to Tempo.
But a lot of heroic abilities of Gale Force and a lot of long-standing heroic abilities were used. But that's true of Tempo Storm too, Army of the Dead and Dragon Blade, a long heroic ability for Genji. Both teams just going to get their respective mercenary camps, try to set up the positioning of their opponents in a way that they might be able to capitalize, and importantly, get the lanes pushed back, get them prepped and ready for the next tribute fight.
The one thing that Gale Force has to be thankful for is the fact that this game, there is no fight where they have to take it for a while. They should ideally take the next tribute fight, and I know it seems like not much is on the line, but there's probably a bit more than you would assume because the experience now is creeping so heavily towards the members of Tempo Storm. We are looking at that third tribute. Excuse me, not the third tribute, but and my brain functions in a weird way. It's the tribute, not the next tribute, but the one after that.
The third for Tempo.
Yes, and when we find that third spike on the side of Tempo, it will be at the window where match curse point for both sides is 20 for Tempo and not thereof of Gale Force, which means that essentially the next tribute is way bigger here for the members of Gale Force eSports. Not only do they need it, they need to make something happen. They have to restore the balance of the curse and experience afterwards. And if they do that, it's an even, I want to say, ish game. It should still be a huge advantage for Tempo, but talking about advantages for Tempo, almost found another there with Caf. A bit too far out, zoning away from the tribute. Caffeine's not going to have any way to move up.
Gale Force is going to step in, but Tempo Storm picks up the tribute before Gale Force can even get into positioning because Tempo found Caf so far back and delayed long enough for June to get it. Gale Force is looking to see if they can still make the fight happen, but Tempo Storm know very well how far ahead now they're in the game because they were able to get that tribute for free.
Gale Force eSports is desperate here. You can see that they really understand that that was a fight that they wanted and without able to get it.
It was so nice of Tempo to keep Gale Force, even for those extra seconds, baiting Gale Force into the fight. Because this whole time, Caterpillar in the top of Dahaka was escorting the catapults all the way in. That forces Illidan to go back and deal with that, and it kept them from soaking all of the lanes for a long time, just giving Tempo Storm that little bit extra amount of time, trying to make sure that they can get to 20 ahead of this third tribute fight.
So where does Gale Force recover? I mean, there is a world where this tribute does spawn before the 20 spike on the side of Tempo because how far the mini waves are pushed out. A bottom pushed out too far to get free soak, top pushed out too far to get free soak, leaving only mid, which you see Tempo Storm is too afraid to get free soak. So at now, there it is, the tribute spawns, and it's within that window. But I mean, let's be honest here. This is, if Gale Force loses this, this is almost now 100% game because they'll be down the 20s. They'll be down everything.
Drag!
Dream.
Caffeine's already very low, and he is blown up. Caught them like super low too from the Reaper's Mark. They have the Tormented Souls from Fan, still dealing a lot of damage to Tempo Storm, but Psalm is slicing and dicing. Illidan and Uther have already been eliminated. Tempo Storm just now losing Malfurion. It's still a 4-2.
Fan has still found himself alive along with K1 Pro. Probably going to get a reset onto Cattle. Not going to connect with all the missiles, but not needed. Calamity going right on in to get the damage. Psalm is next to fall, but Greymane is going to get the tribute. This is a curse, but the biggest thing is the fact that this curse is happening while 3 members of Tempo Storm are just dead. Only Arthas and Greymane are alive, meaning Gale Force can actually get a free defense. I'd be even maybe as willing to say that that was not worth capping on the side of Tempo Storm. That one's a bit debatable, but at the end of the day, Gale Force has got to be thankful that they really do not have game point now on the line.
Oh man, Gale Force had a lot of their members die earlier than Tempo Storm because Fan was able to get those last couple of kills. Tempo Storm headed up to their boss, but not seeing anybody, Leeming checked in on that, and with the respawn timer so in favor of Gale Force, Tempo Storm had to abandon the boss. So another way that they're not really doing too much with their curse, with those 3 tributes, they still do have 20 ahead of Gale Force, and they're going to have Genji and Dahaka back up in a few seconds, but as you said, it's a curse that was, for the most part, defended freely. Bottom keep took some damage, but the keeps still stand.
Now Temple Storm, even though they've had a huge lead for a majority of this game, except for this, and New Barak getting dragged in and blown up, that is almost inevitably going to be the end. Now Gale Force has to 4 versus 5, try and stop this boss that is going to be taken down the 20s. Divine Shield, Tormented Soul, gaining almost no value. The boss is now just going to be dropped. Tempo Storm gets the cap, they get the channel, Cawthon's down.
They get Cawthon, and they're going to have Malfurion after this because Psalm is just slicing through every single member of Gale Force eSports. Fury's getting fairly low, and Fan's doing his best to stay alive thanks to the healing of Akaface. He comes back. All 4 members of Gale Force still stand, and they've brought down 2 members, but the boss
Up on top. See, Tempo Storm just has to be able to make sure that Gale Force can't go back to end or stop this game from not ending. They're in a position to be able to hold on. This boss is 19 minutes unescorted. It will not end the game on its own. So Tempo Storm, after 2 whole curses and the double boss, does not have enough to end this game. And Gale Force holds on for another team fight on even footing, the 20v20.
Every time we see King Caffeine get blown up, and then it looked like there is no hope, somehow Fan and the members of Gale Force are able to get a couple of picks that keep Tempo from winning the game.
But now they're going to start their own boss, and Tempo Storm's nowhere to be found. Gilly,
they have no mouth.
They have to make something to transition outward and stop this. Okay, so then now we find a situation to where Gale Force knows there's going to be a lot of pressure up on the top half of the map. Illidan's going to be the one who has to respond to that. But this boss on bottom can't be wasted. This is win condition 1, and it is into a keep on bottom. That cannot end the game immediately. Win condition 2 is that curse. If they fail with both of those avenues, the game just continues essentially until the top boss ends up spawning, or you give Tempo Storm a million opportunities to get a free team wipe and end the game.
Gale Force went back to get their bruisers and to clear out the Giants, and that gives plenty of time for Tempo Storm to eliminate the boss and not have to deal with that. So their keep is going to be nice and healthy, but the tribute is on the other side. That lane has been pushed. Catapults are on core. Michael goes back for that, has the hunt up so he can hunt back in. But again, nobody in position to get the tribute.
Win condition 1.
Gone.
Just dead. Win condition 2's got 1 minute and 6 seconds ticking away, Gilly. And Gale Force has to, a minimum, double keep with this. Either that or look to be able to get core after a couple of picks. But being passive and doing what Tempo's done for the first 2 curses of this game is unacceptable if they're going to be able to recover.
Starting with the 4 in the mid lane. Tempo retreat back, just poking. A lot of focus from Tempo throughout this game with their kill combination of Isolation, Drag, Twilight Dream, Cursed Bullet has been put onto King Caffeine. Has to make sure that he can live through this. There
Drag.
it is. Roots underneath, Cursed Bullet.
He lives this time thanks to the peel coming out from the members of Gale Force. Akaface receives a bit of pressure. Cap's going to be the one to go in. The hunt, the damage, they get Cawthon. The Dragon Blade's going to be used, getting so much value, ripping through the members of Gale Force eSports. That is going to be Psalm making the plays.
That was insane synergy from Tempo Storm. All 5 members of Gale Force dove in once King Caffeine said to go, and they all delivered. They had the Twilight Dream from Malfurion hit every single member of Gale Force eSports, and that was a prime spot for Dragon Blade to get basically the most value you could ever get from a Dragon Blade. Gale Force are starting to head back, trying to defend. They have no one can stop death, so Fan is back alive, and Akaface is tier 2. He's going to do their best to try to stop Tempo Storm from winning this game number 1.
He just needs to hold on for the Illidan, and he looks like he might buy enough time. Tormented Souls is ripping through a lot of the HP of Tempo Storm. Cattle should not go down by any means. The root is going to seal the deal. He dies!
Oh my goodness, did they do it again?
They did it again. They held on long enough. Illidan will be alive. Akaface going down. He has Redemption, I believe, off of cooldown.
We'll see in a second. No.
It doesn't even matter, though.
They did
Illidan's alive. That is enough to stop this game from going down. Boss, though, and Gilly is going to spawn in 45 seconds. That is 10 to 15 seconds difference from the Malthael and Uther, who just sacrificed themselves to end the game. And that is where Tempo finds the win.
That is the drawback of no one can stop death. If you use it and you die again, you have 25% extra time on your next respawn. Fan will be thinking about that as he waits to respawn.
10 to 15 seconds, which is about to be the difference between boss. It's almost like...
But if he had not respawned, it would have just been Uther.
I mean,
it's sort of a checkmate position, but he had to use it there.
You are right. He did, by no means did he make a misplay. I'm just highlighting the fact that this is one of those cases where legitimately that talent may be the reason this game ends, and it's all because of the timing of this boss up on top.
There are 3 members of Gale Force eSports here trying to stop Tempo Storm from getting a boss that will head straight to their core at 24 minutes into game number 1. Contagion! Isolation hits all 3 of the Gale Force members here, and they step back.
They gotta
Uther
dive.
Spawned. Malthael spawned. Gale Force have but one opportunity left, and that's to dive past the boss and win the fight.
This is the most expected place to dive past the boss, is around this vision control. So Tempo Storm, if they get flanked here, I'm gonna be honest, that's just a new mistake at that point. Like this is the area where you expect that rotation. So you play clumped around the boss on this, and then once they go past, that's where you see the disengage. Drag brings in after tormented souls. They go in, Twilight Dream ends up dropping. You see Psalm doing work once more with that Dragon Blade, but the boss onto the core is all that matters.
They're low, resets. Genji's already down. There's 2 members down, so is Greymane.
They need Cattle. They have to get another reset.
They stop him.
They did it?
Okay, so they take out 3. All the members of Gale Force left have to go back for the boss. Fury still heading in with the boss. The shielding starting to come down on Gale Force's core.
And the shielding is gone, 100%. That is a 24-minute boss. That thing is chunking. Throwing out the stun onto the ground, about 6% in auto. Can Fury and the boss do it?
It's at 43%. The boss still punching the core.
I don't
39%,
think it can.
31%. They're so close. It is so close, but they stop the boss. This is game 1 of this series.
There's 2 catapults on the core.
He got Malfurion.
And now the game's done. They did it. The counter pressure of the catapults. There is no way. Dahaka can't stop that on his own. Gale Force, after taking 3 tributes, 2 bosses tank their way, they stall out this game long enough for what is legitimately a miracle fight. They win it, and more importantly, they win the game. Taking the Cursed Hollow Game 1 over Tempo Storm.
That was game 1, guys. We've got potentially 4 more of those. I mean, I want that, but I don't know if my heart can take it.
That was, the whole time I'm like, oh, but this is going on over there. But this is going over there.
You've got the Anub Malfurion 1v1 dream happening? Like, what just happened?
The boss dive up on top that somehow works around the only choke that you could expect. Tempo clumped a bit too hard. I mean, I have about 35 different points to talk about there. I feel like the biggest thing, reeling it back, the biggest thing, Tempo Storm still indicating exactly the same problems that they have always shown. Getting huge advantages, questioning how they should push it, and then not pushing it hard enough to the point where it actually hurts them. And that happened 3 points, both curses, and the boss on top. All 3 were not necessarily win conditions, but you could assume they would achieve a certain level of success. They barely were able to meet that, or maybe even a little bit less in most cases, especially that first curse of the game, not gaining any structures out of it. So Tempo is struggling to identify their advantages and push them accordingly, as always. But Gale Force eSports, on the other hand, they didn't do, they were just getting bodied the whole first half of that game, other than the very end.
Yeah, they lost a lot of fights, but a lot of that came down to figuring out what Tempo Storm's game plan was. There were maybe 1 or 2 too many times that King Caffeine just got obliterated very fast by a drag, all the crowd control that they had to follow up, cursed bullets, and then they were forced into weird situations where they still had to fight without a Nubarak. And this is not a double warrior that Gale Force drafted. They had double melee assassin. They need that frontliner to be able to peel for them, especially the Li Ming, who didn't have dominance. But I think that one of the biggest issues for Tempo Storm when we look back at it is they lost a team fight, or at least they had an extremely close team fight, as all of their team fights seemed to go, that came down to 2 people living on each side and then capping the curse.
Yeah.
And they were not able to get a single extra keep from that. They only still had the 1 catapult pressure.
Yeah, I know a lot of that. I don't know. That one, I feel like there's like you could actually take a screenshot of that moment and be like, why do you not cap it, right? And it may be a little bit closer than some of the miscaps that we've seen at times, but I do agree with you that it is a major setback that you suddenly look at and you're like, that could have been it, right? I mean, on both sides of the table, when looking at Mouthdale and his 20, it's like, is that, was that a major point that maybe should have set you too far behind? I don't know, but I do actually want to take a look at the replay of the last fight
let's do it.
Just because it was so wild and there was a lot of different things to be looking at, right? Like when does Gale Force end up getting the flank? When do we see the focus onto the death? So here around Vision, I talked about this is the area where you expect Gale Force to want to take the fight, and they end up getting it appropriately. So watch how we see Fan is going to be the hyper focus. He moves up aggressively, actually intentionally wearing that, knowing he wants to get the initiation. They go in with a Tormented Souls. Mikey Dahl gets pressure onto the back line. So far, Tempo's fight is just, after Twilight Dreams use, it is just an ice block and just trying to survive. Malfurion got very little heals. The entire dive onto the backline, it just wasn't even close. And this is now, Tempo Storm's whole goal was to not get initiated on there, past the boss. I don't know if you're taking a look at where the boss is, but it is not in the middle of that fight.
Nope.
And it was just the fact that they were allowing the fight to be able to happen and that they lost it that fast. Like, there's 2 rules in a boss fight in that area. Number 1, do not get 5 or 0'd. That is the absolutely terrible, like, worst case scenario. And number 2 is if we have to lose the fight, we lose it as slow as we possibly can, because we still win this game in all cases where they don't get 3 members for free to walk onto their base. That is the only case. The reason you stick with that boss is because then you not only have a bigger area to fight around, which he provides AoE crowd control to peel off of you, is like even if they initiate, you walk with it, because then you get free damage onto the core as you're going to wipe. That fight happens, but you did more damage and you have better race potential.
Yeah, but they weren't allowed to walk along with the boss because Malfurion got initiated on. That was really good, and I have to commend Gale Force about how they took that fight, because they had 2 people initiate on top of Malfurion. They forced Ice Block, which then keeps them from being able to walk along with the boss. But the minute Akaface hits a stun on Psalm and they realize that they can take out Genji, everyone collapses and takes him out. Being able to bring down Genji while still having Li Ming, it's just a battle of resets at that point. Whoever goes down gives the other team a large advantage in being able to clean up the rest of the fight. Let's go to the map.
Let's go.